On the show today, U.S. Exim Bank seeks vote on $5 billion loan to Mozambique LNG project. Moody's sees budget cuts as option for South Africa to absorb Eskom costs. Plus, San Francisco crowdfunder Kiva sets up Sierra Leone credit database. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Business Incorporated. I'm Chimezie Obi-Iwabu. Let's get the show started now with the markets. And amongst the markets we track here on the African continent, only Egypt is closed today. And generally, sentiment was mixed amongst South Africa and Nigeria at intraday. The Nigerian Stock Exchange sustained the positive sentiment seen since Wednesday and was up 0.29% at intraday, while the JSE index in South Africa shared 0.15%. Meanwhile, Egypt's EGX30 closed for the week negative on Thursday, down 0.17%, despite the 1.50% interest rate cut by the central bank. And the market in Kenya is trading, but closed positive on Thursday. And a look at the markets in the Middle East, of course, they are closed today, and they closed mostly negative on Thursday, as Saudi Arabian stocks were dragged by declining financial stocks amid uncertainty over Federal Reserve policy following the release of minutes from the Fed's July meeting. In Saudi Arabia, the index fell 0.74%, as Samba Financial Group lost 2.6% and National Commercial Bank slipped 0.8%. Meanwhile, Qatar's index rose 0.42% in a boost from market heavyweight Industries Qatar, which increased 1.4%. In the UAE, Dubai's index was down 0.79%, its lowest close since July 21, while Abu Dhabi's index was marginally low at 0.03%. In Europe, stocks traded higher on Friday morning as investors await a speech from U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. And what are the markets expecting to hear from Powell? Conrad, of course, will tell us. Hello, Conrad. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And I would love to say, thank God it's Friday, but I think it's a bit soon to focus on a very relaxed weekend. We have a lot to talk about, Jimmy.
Exactly, particularly the G7 this Saturday. But anyway, we can still say thank God it's Friday. In the meantime, the last trading day, of course, of the week and the day where influential from, central bankers meeting in Jackson Hole, a resort town in the U.S. state of Wyoming. So what are the markets expecting from Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman?
Nothing less but a clear indication whether or not the United States Federal Reserve, the Reserve Bank of the U.S., is going to further cut interest rates later this year. That is what the market is hoping for. But I have to say there's room for disappointment. You mentioned the minutes of the Fed earlier in the show. They indicate that not all of the members of the Federal Reserve's Open Market Committee, not all of the U.S. Most important monetary policymakers are convinced that another rate cut in the U.S. is warranted, because they think that the U.S. economy is strong enough and that this is not an environment where you cut interest rates. The problem is that the impact of the Trump trade policies is very difficult to evaluate and to foresee. And so the other side of the coin, the opinion that this is when you should cut interest rates in anticipation of an economic downswing, that's also an argument to make. And that's why the speech of Jerome Powell is so important, so widely expected on the financial markets. He will have to give guidance. And of course, at the moment, we're all waiting for this guidance.
Well, Conrad, you talked about a busy weekend. A summit of the G7 countries scheduled for tomorrow. Now, the heads of state of the United States, China, Germany, Japan, France, the United Kingdom, Italy are coming together. Ahead of this meeting, a lot of activities happening. What's the latest?
Well, the latest is a Newswire report which just came out a couple of minutes ago, a couple of minutes before our show started, to look at what the German DAX, the share index, is making of this Newswire report. The report is that China is planning retaliation against the American tariffs. I can't give you a lot more than the headline, which just says retaliation is in the making. I also found a tweet of the chief editor of the Global Times, which is a tabloid in Beijing, who writes, based on what he knows, China will take countermeasures in response to the US tariffs. Beijing will soon unveil the plans, and the ammunition is strong enough to fight back. The US side will feel the pain. That's the end of this tweet. So this is, of course, something that's going to be talked about at the G7 summit. Another, I think, new topic, something that not everyone had on the agenda up until very, very shortly ago is, you know, the wildfires in Brazil, the Amazon rainforest fires. President Macron announced that he will put those topics, those fires on the agenda at the G7 summit, because he says this is a concern for all of us, for the whole world, and in particular, of course, for the leading economic nations of this world. Remember, we've been getting those very negative reports about wildfires in the Amazon. The president of Brazil not doing enough against it. He complains, Bolsonaro that is, that, you know, Macron and the countries here in Europe are using colonialist talk. But, well, it's quite obvious that burning wildfires, burning rainforests in Brazil have an impact on world climate, and like this, of course, an impact on economic activity all over the world. That's why the G7 countries are going to talk about this topic as well.
Anyway, let's hope the leaders come up with some positive agreement there. In the meantime, on the European stock markets, the mood is not bad today, even though the DAX is showing, you know, negative at the moment. And of course, this is driven also by mergers and acquisitions in the steel sector and the world of children's toys. Tell us more.
Yes, steel sector. ThyssenKrupp here in Germany talking to Klöckner & Co., which is one of the leading traders of steel and of other metals. They are talking about common projects, maybe even a merger or a takeover of Klöckner by ThyssenKrupp. Then today we have Hasbro in the United States, the American toy company, which is going to take over Entertainment One. That's the company that makes Peppa Pig, the popular cartoon for kids, but that also holds other rights to television series. Also in the talk today, Bang & Olufsen, the music playing devices maker from Sweden or from Denmark, from Scandinavia at least. A very chic design. You might know it, Bang & Olufsen, but recently quite a few problems in its business. The chief of Bang & Olufsen says if there is a takeover offer coming to the company, he would listen. And this, of course, announcement is pushing the share price nicely to the upside today.
Well, Conrad, the weekend still looks busy for you and I, but we can still say, thank God it's Friday.
Have a good weekend.
Right, and you too. Okay, investors, of course, are seriously looking out for Powell's speech at the central bank's Jackson Hole Symposium for hints of future interest rate cuts. Also, the group of G7 annual summit begins on Saturday in France, bringing together the leaders of Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United States, and is expected to end without a joint communique for the first time in its 44-year history due to deepening rifts between the heads of states. Well, let's see how these are being chewed in the city of London. Juliana joins me now. Hello, Juliana. Good afternoon. Should we say thank God it's Friday as well?
Thank God it's Friday, Jimmy. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Well, the What Stop central bankers are on their annual trip to Wyoming for the Jackson Hole Summit. Investors will be clinging to Jerome Powell's every word when he speaks later today for clues as to his next policy move. How interested are the UK investors in this, and how are the markets behaving ahead of this meeting?
Well, the clock is certainly ticking down to Jerome Powell's big Fed Reserve speech, and the city are definitely watching. There's certainly interesting, which has taken some analysts a little bit left purely because he hasn't shown any indication that he plans to cut interest rates in a manner that Donald Trump and the markets would like him to. But they're certainly feeling exceptionally positive. Of course, those probably close to the central bank governors are hearing a whiff that potentially there could be more base points cut off interest rates, but we'll have to wait and see. The markets are definitely reacting to that at intraday. The FTSE All-Share is up 0.54%. The FTSE 100 is also up by 0.54%, and the FTSE 250 is up 0.91%. In currencies, the British pound is down on the US dollar today by 0.30%, also down on the euro by 0.05%, and down on the Japanese yen by 0.12%.
Now, the next reshuffle of the UK share indices is due to take place next week, and an investment research analyst at the Share Center says Marks & Spencer is certain to be dropped from the benchmark index. Would that really happen, and why?
It's definitely likely to happen, Chimmy, although this isn't the first time Marks & Spencers have been close from being axed from the FTSE 100. As soon as those rumours were put out this morning, their shares dropped by 1.1%, and it is looking increasingly likely that on Wednesday, the 1st of September, that Marks & Spencers will actually be dropped. They were seen as the stalwart of the UK retail scene. Of course, they've been, a popular name and a popular destination for generations of shoppers here in the UK. But we've discussed, and many people have seen, that footfall along UK retail streets is increasingly beginning to fall, and those that haven't managed to successfully transfer online have suffered. So if indeed Marks & Spencers are dropped from the FTSE 100, this is a big telltale sign of things to come for other big names on the UK high street.
All right, let's talk about the G Summit scheduled for Saturday. Who is attending from the UK, and will the meeting be a market-moving news next week?
Well, I would say, considering that these G7 nations make up about 40% of the world's wealth, definitely markets will be looking at what is and what isn't said. Of course, Boris Johnson and some senior members of his cabinet will be representing the UK. But it seems as if Emmanuel Macron, who's this year's host, isn't particularly focusing on finances. As Conrad, my colleague in Frankfurt, was saying, there's going to be a lot of interest in the environment. We know that Emmanuel Macron is very interested in that, and a lot of people will be watching his interaction with Donald Trump. We saw last year at the meeting in Quebec that Donald Trump actually left early. These kind of gatherings with world leaders doesn't suit him well, and he's America first interaction, which is what is going to please voters. But there seems to be lots to discuss. Of course, Brexit will be on the agenda, and some of these leaders do see Trump's spat with Iran and some of the tariff trade wars that he's having with China as affecting them. So there'll certainly be lots to speak about, and I'm sure on Monday we'll catch up on all the happenings then.
Absolutely. And while we say thank God it's Friday, let's keep an eye on those meetings. The Fed meeting and, of course, the G7 summit meeting. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend. Juliana.
Thank
you. In Asia, markets rose by the close on Friday as investors looked ahead to an important speech from U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell later in the day. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 rose 0.4%, while the Topix index added 0.23%. Elsewhere, mainland Chinese shares traded mostly higher. The Shanghai Composite gained 0.49%, and the Shenzhen Composite was flat. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index climbed 0.67%. Australia's ASX 200 went up 0.33%. And in the U.S. stock index, futures were higher Friday morning as market participants awaited a key speech from the Federal Reserve's top officials. At around 4 a.m. Eastern Time, Dow futures rose 84 points, indicating a positive open of more than 68 points. Futures on the S&P and Nasdaq were both slightly higher. Our market focus is largely attuned to the U.S. Central Bank's annual Jackson Hole Symposium, with Fed Chairman Jerome Powell expected to address an audience of policymakers and economists at around 10 a.m. Eastern Time.